tell me a little bit about Hollywood star who, right after recording a podcast, gets into a fatal crash, because this is a wild story.
Yeah, so Anne Heche, who I think a lot of people, if you aren't familiar with Anne Heche's career as much, you probably be more familiar in terms of like from a pop culture perspective. She was
Mhm.
dating Ellen for some time,
Right,
and it
right.
was a really high profile relationship. And she has a podcast, Better Together, with
Okay,
her friend Heather.
okay.
So during this podcast, and to be fair, it's not entirely clear if she really did record that podcast that same day. It can only,
Mm,
we know that's when it was uploaded. So, but
gotcha.
it certainly seems to align with or to follow the timeline of what happened as far as the series of
Okay,
events.
okay.
So they pulled the podcast episode, but in the clip that I did put up, I
Mhm.
do have the audio from the podcast, courtesy of TMZ. But in the audio, she was so wasted. No decent person would have ever let her get behind the wheel like at all.
It was
Not even
shocking.
she would have had to sleep it off. She was saying in the audio, she says she was drinking vodka, which was provided by a sponsor of the show, it seems. And she said, and she was joking about it, but she was saying that they were chasing it with wine. So they were like really, really hammered.
Wow. And I mean, that's the crazy thing about podcast culture too, is that,
Mhm,
you get the sponsorship and this drink
mhm.
champs world. It's like there's this incentive to be really
Yeah,
wasted.
kind of really, yeah, toasted and everything. And it's funny because like I get that too. Like I get like, especially that with like with the press kits that come in, I
Mhm.
get sent like a lot of like bottles of wine. I've had bottles of liquor. Like I get a lot of that stuff sent. But I always just think it's kind of interesting because it's like they don't know a person's consumption habits and
Right,
like
right,
or what they're up
right,
against. And no one's ever asked me like, hey, are you good with getting this thing?
right, right, right.
I've even had people try to send me Delta 8 and marijuana samples. And it's just like,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow. So what do you think about like how this has been covered? Because I'm noticing that with Anne Heche, maybe because of her reputation, maybe because of who she is and who she's dated, um, I'm not seeing maybe the same tone of coverage as I was seeing with the La Brea crash,
Yeah, with
right?
the
With
Windsor.
the
Yeah,
with the nurse.
yeah, that's an excellent point. I think in this case, maybe people were a little more gracious about it because it was a single car crash. I mean, she
Mm,
almost like if you look at the footage, like I said, she not only okay, there's two crashes.
right, right.
First, she crashes into a garage in an apartment building, and then she narrowly like misses someone and almost killed, like ran somebody over.
God damn.
But it didn't happen. The house, what people don't realize is that when she plowed into that house,
Mhm.
she went all the way through it. The house is just not structurally sound. We're not talking about like she just kind of made it into the living room and inched in a little bit. She plowed through this home, and this poor woman lost everything. Again, she went through the home. It wasn't just like she inched in, it kind of crashed into the door or something or the window. Some of these crazier stories that we hear
Right.
sometimes. She plowed through the home. Her entire vehicle was in the home and it destroyed the structure completely. And the women lost everything. But the woman, I mean, and all these good Samaritans on the ground that were attempting to save her,
Mhm.
they're so clearly traumatized. And even when the women spoke on it, she was so traumatized and so sad about Anne Heche and wasn't even thinking about her belongings or even talking about anything of that sort. She just really truly wanted her to be able to survive this and to get better. So there's a lot of that. But then there's also with this case, the toxicology report, unlike the case with Windsor Hills, Anne Heche had cocaine and fentanyl in her system. So
Right. And
people,
so in the Windsor Hills case, what was
they
there any
said
alcohol in her system?
there was no alcohol in her system. However, the woman had been in 13 prior car crashes. So there's
Hmm.
something going on with her too,
She's like a
that she
dangerous driver, maybe.
something, yeah, like she should not be driving. So something
Hmm.
else is going on. And they have not yet, told us what goes into that. But
Hmm.
in Anne Heche's case, had she survived, she was definitely facing a DUI.
Yeah. Oh,
Mhm,
absolutely. And I mean, I mean, it was such a crazy and just horrendous level crash in terms of impact. You're
mhm,
right. It's a miracle that no one else was hurt.
mhm,
And I think that is, I don't know. When I saw your reporting on it, what I was curious about was the theories about like how this crash unfolded, and then like you know, what exactly people are saying about the sort of nature of the crash.
Well, the way that it's being reported on a lot of the blogs is that they're wondering how she was able to just pop up. And
Right.
what people don't understand is that, especially if you look, that's why unfortunately, I had to include the footage of the car in the record
Right.
so
Right.
people could really, really understand the impact of what really took place.
Mm.
She was not, I guess what they thought is that she was in a body bag. What she
Oh
really
wow.
was in a protective sleeve because she was burned so severely.
Oh
They were
wow.
trying to protect her skin because she was going to need the necessary surgery to stay alive. So
Wow.
that's a very different thing. So when she popped up, it wasn't because she was dying or dead necessarily at that moment. She was being protected. So when she popped up out of
Mm.
shock, it would seem,
Right.
and actually with the adrenaline rushing with something like
Right.
cocaine and
Right.
fentanyl in your system, that's entirely possible. It may have seemed just optically, if you don't really understand what was going on, that maybe she was being restrained in some kind of,
Sure.
negative
Sure.
way or some kind of conspiracy was involved, but it was nothing like that. And
Right.
I truly believe that, they probably knew as soon as they had to sedate her, there was very likely a chance she was never going to come to because of all the,
Wow.
it's very dangerous to sedate people anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
You
true.
have to, it's very dangerous. So, especially if you're having a surgery, like I've had minor surgeries where they've asked if I wanted to go under, and I've just told them no. They asked me if I wanted to go under to get a wisdom tooth pulled. And I'm just like,
Wow.
no, like, I mean, why? It just,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you just don't know how you're going to
Your
react to any
body's
kind of
gonna.
anesthesia.
Right.
You just don't know. And some people just don't come out of it. So, um, with all of those, you've got the fentanyl, the cocaine, potentially the alcohol was involved here. Who really knows? Maybe she was hungover in addition to those things. And, alcohol is a depressant. Things like cocaine are uppers. I mean, who knows what kind of
Yeah.
cocktail that really exactly this loopy cocktail that was going on. And she's also admitted to having mental health episodes and issues where she's had
Right.
admitted to even like dissociative disorders
Right.
where she has split basically
Personalities.
personalities. And I
Mhm.
don't want to use that in a derogatory way because I know that that is not necessarily the language that we use in this day and time, but essentially
Got you.
she had characters
Got you.
or yeah, that were kind of existing within the same
Mhm.
mind,
Mhm.
right? So, and this was something that she had dealt with because of abuse in her childhood.
Mm.
um she dealt with depression. She had been sexually abused by her father. I mean, it's just such a sad, sad story. And you see all these things that have happened to where she ended up, the highs and the lows, and you can just kind of see that um you'd never know where this was going to go, but it doesn't seem like it was ever going to be something that
I
was
just
going to be.
wonder how accountable can they hold the people who were around her if that timeline is accurate, right?
Hmm.
And she was getting, potentially loaded before getting into her vehicle. I just wonder, like, in the legal system or just generally, like, how accountable can we hold people who are around you? Because I know no fan of mine is gonna let me leave a
Never.
place like clearly, because I mean the audio is like this is slurred to the point of
Yeah.
this person is not good. You know that they might pass out or lose consciousness or have impaired judgment. And I just don't
I
understand.
wouldn't even have uploaded that episode. Like, first of all,
Right,
you're gonna lay down. We're not gonna do this. We're gonna do this another day and just lay
right,
down. Like, I,
right.
but I definitely would not have uploaded the episode because it sends off the wrong message. Now,
Yeah.
in addition to that, there is a picture of her in her car just before the crash, where she
Mhm.
has some kind of, you could see it within her cup holder. There's vodka there, and it was pointed out that there was vodka in there. So I mean, it
Wow.
kind of, again, it all kind of like matches up to the timeline that must have been right after the podcast.
Yeah. Do they
Mhm.
still have the episode up?
No, they took the episode down.
That's
Hmm.
very indicting of them, right? Like I
Yes.
just feel like if you have the wherewithal after to say, oh, this
Hmm.
is a bad look, like why couldn't you look out for your friend? And it definitely makes me feel like, at least in that world, that celebs like her might not have the kind of friends that they think they do.
They definitely don't. Because I'll tell you what, to speak specifically to your point,
Mm.
if you and I went to a bar today and let's say we get super, super, super freaking wasted and just some local bar, and
Yeah.
then we go and get into a car accident, that bar would be held accountable if that
Oh
was
yeah.
if yeah. So that something should and could be done if everybody in Hollywood wasn't like above the law.
Right, right.
Mhm.
That's a great point.